January 1942, Clark Field, Luzon. The jungle air hung thick with the smell of burned oil and damp earth as Japanese mechanics picked through the wreckage of another American fighter. Smoke curled lazily from the cratered ground, where twisted fragments of aluminum glinted beneath the afternoon sun. The aircraft, a Curtiss P40 Warhawk, had taken a storm of 7.7mm rounds before spiraling into the palms. Its skin was shredded, the cockpit blackened, yet one of the mechanics froze mid-inspection. The fuel tanks, though punctured, had not ignited. Inside the torn fuselage, the rubber lining had bubbled and sealed itself, smothering the gasoline before it could burn. To men who had watched Allied planes erupt into orange fireballs after a single tracer round, it seemed impossible. Word of the phenomenon spread through the maintenance depots like whispered superstition. At Nichols Field, a ground officer examined the remains of another American craft and found the same strange tar-like substance clinging to the tank walls. "The bullets pass through," one report noted, "yet the fire refuses to follow." Across the occupied Pacific, from Rabaul's sweltering airstrips to the workshops of Rangoon, Japanese crews sent back similar accounts. American aircraft were coming down riddled with holes but refusing to die. Some even returned to their bases with wings shredded, engines coughing, and fuel tanks leaking only fumes instead of flame. To the men of the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service, who worked daily amid the volatile scent of aviation gasoline and lacquered cloth, the discovery was both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Aviation fuel was their constant enemy. One spark could consume a plane in seconds, and even a ricochet could doom an ace pilot. Yet these American machines seemed protected by something invisible, some secret alchemy of chemistry and engineering. Mechanics began cutting open captured wrecks in search of clues. They peeled away the metal skin to find layers of strange, dark rubber compressed between sheets of fabric and aluminum, flexible, resilient, and faintly sweet with the odor of oil and gum. When stabbed or pierced, the material swelled and sealed the wound. Japanese engineers at Yokosuka and Kasumigaura took the findings seriously. They drew samples, cataloged residues, and sent them to laboratories for analysis. Reports from the field described fuel cells that heal when shot, and officers debated whether the Americans had discovered a new polymer or some rubber compound unknown to Japanese industry. In a war fought as much with materials as with men, this revelation struck at a critical weakness. The Empire's aircraft, built for range and maneuverability, carried their fuel unprotected, thin metal skins filled with explosive vapor. Every burst of tracer fire was a roll of the dice. By contrast, the Americans had somehow found a way to make gasoline behave. The discovery reached Tokyo quietly, without fanfare, but its implications unsettled even senior staff officers. What else were the Americans hiding in their machines? What other mysteries had their factories produced while Japan stretched its supply lines across half the Pacific? No immediate answer came, but the question lingered like the smell of smoke on the wind. The revelation would soon cross oceans again, not through rumor, but through deliberate study. For in distant Akron, Ohio, engineers and chemists were perfecting a substance that would make steel seem obsolete against the greater enemy of war, fire itself. 235 words. The 1930s were an age when the sky itself seemed to burn. Across Spain, China, and the deserts of North Africa, the promise of flight was repeatedly consumed by flame. Pilots learned, often in seconds, that it was not the bullet that killed them. It was what followed. A single puncture in a fuel tank could transform a sleek monoplane into a funeral pyre. Aviation gasoline, lighter than water yet deadlier than any shell, spilled into the slipstream, vaporized, and met the open flame of a hot exhaust or tracer round. For the men who fought in the air during those years, the cockpit was less a machine than a coffin waiting for ignition. In 1937, over the skies of Spain, both sides watched their aircraft vanish in blinding orange flashes. German and Italian. Pilots, flying for Franco's nationalists, reported seeing Republican fighters explode mid-turn, the fuel mist igniting before they could even bail out. American observers, serving quietly under neutrality laws, recorded everything: gun calibers, damage patterns, the way aircraft burned after impact. In China, the story was the same. Japanese bombers over Nanking left trails of fire in their wake, not only from their targets but from their own losses. Bullet strikes that pierced a fuel line turned even the most disciplined formations into infernos. At Wright Field, Ohio, the lessons did not go unnoticed. By 1938, engineers from the Army Air Corps were already dissecting the problem, running experiments with laminated layers of rubber, fabric, and vulcanized compounds. Some of the mixtures expanded when soaked in gasoline, swelling shut like the bark of a wounded tree. Early tests were crude, tanks that leaked less, not tanks that sealed completely. But the principle had taken hold. Fire, they reasoned, could be fought not by armor alone, but by science. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, a different philosophy guided design tables in Yokosuka and Tachikawa. Japanese engineers prioritized range and agility above all else. Their aircraft would win through speed and maneuver, not weight and protection. Fuel tanks were thin-walled, unarmored, and unprotected. Every pound saved meant another mile of reach. Germany, however, took a darker lesson from Spain. When the Luftwaffe entered Poland in 1939, its bombers bore armor plates and shielded fuel cells, trading grace for endurance. The message was clear. A modern aircraft must not only strike hard, it must survive the strike. As the United States moved toward rearmament in 1940, the engineers at Wright Field were ready. The new generation of American fighters, the Curtiss P40 Warhawk, the Bell P-39 Airacobra, and the radical twin-engined Lockheed P-38 Lightning, were ordered to carry an innovation still in testing: self-sealing fuel tanks. Within a year, what had begun as a laboratory curiosity would become one of the most vital lifelines in the air war to come. The secret to defying fire began not with armor or steel, but with chemistry. By the spring of 1940, in the laboratories of the Army Materiel Command and the research halls of Goodyear and Firestone, a quiet revolution was underway. Engineers dismantled the problem of aviation fire not as a mechanical failure but as a chemical reaction that could be reversed. What they conceived was deceptively simple: a tank that could heal itself. Instead of building thicker walls to resist bullets, they built flexible skins that could close the wounds bullets left behind. The self-sealing fuel tank was a study in layers, 4 to 6 sheets bonded between fabric and thin aluminum. The outer layer was made of tough, vulcanized rubber, designed to resist abrasion and puncture. Beneath it lay the heart of the invention: a sponge-like inner sheet of raw gum rubber. This unvulcanized layer was alive in a sense. When soaked in gasoline, it swelled, pressing inward to fill any hole torn through it. The process took minutes, not seconds, but in combat minutes were enough. Fuel might leak, but it would not spray into the slipstream. The vapor would not ignite. The fire would die before it began. At Goodyear's converted tire plants in Akron and Firestone's facilities in Los Angeles, the production lines shifted from peacetime tires to secret military orders. Civilian workers, many of them women, handled the layered rubber sheets under strict security. Only a handful of senior engineers even knew what the product was for. Among them were Benjamin Pinkel and Harry W. Reich, researchers whose innovations in adhesives and synthetic bonding made the system viable. Their challenge was not only to make rubber seal, but to make it endure. Tropical heat, Arctic cold, and the corrosive fumes of high-octane aviation fuel all threatened to dissolve lesser compounds. Through hundreds of trials, they found the balance. A standard self-sealing tank added roughly 60 to 80 pounds to a fighter's total weight, an acceptable sacrifice when it meant the difference between an explosion and a safe landing. Field tests at Wright Field proved astonishing. Even after being riddled with .50 caliber bullets, test tanks leaked only small traces before sealing tight again. What had once been a fragile aluminum can became a living membrane, capable of saving both machine and man. By 1941, the design was approved for mass production, still classified, still hidden behind code numbers and restricted patents. Few beyond select engineers in the United States and Britain understood what was being built. In Tokyo, no one yet realized that a new kind of armor was taking shape, one forged not in steel, but in chemistry.